Man, tell me about your journey to modern work and learning. I know there was an initial transition. You first and foremost came in with, and I think this is something that's unique about Insight. One of the things that we always look for in our hiring process is really kind of this, what I would call this characteristic of care in the people that we hire, in wanting to care for people. And I think that's what's so unique about Insight specifically, because I think if we go through our staff, each and every one, some of their care is very honed into a certain specific thing. So talk to me about how that characteristic of care, because you entered in first as a an advisor, and then you saw this opportunity in the modern work and learning side. Tell me about that transition, and then how that flows into what you do now.
Yeah, that transition scared the crap out of me.
I've never heard this story.
Yeah.
I've been
Yeah.
waiting to hear
Yeah.
about this. Is perfect timing.
Yeah.
I've always wondered what the transition was for you, Ben.
Yeah.
Yeah. So boy, oh boy, I got into the advising gig because I really liked the IT strategy.
Yeah.
When it comes down to it, and again, helping people through IT strategies. Like I, as an IT manager over the last 8 years, have really helped transform our company culture, as well as you created some pretty massive efficiencies through adopting technology.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I just want to kind of put that on repeat for other people. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
leverage some of that experience that I've had. So that's kind of how I started out in the advisory space. What I quickly came to find out, as I'm sure Ryan and Travis, you are well aware, is that a lot of people who are working with, technology partners are in long-term contracts.
Yeah.
And it's almost just like a numbers game of trying to engage with them. And at the time for the advisory role, it was both like, hey, we need to engage with, finding new clients, as well as, the managing and the IT strategy.
Sure.
And it was, while I really enjoy people and helping them, the ability to do that as an advisor for me was pretty challenging.
Okay.
And I made it work a little bit, and was able to bring in some clients, but it was not my favorite part of the job.
Okay. Gotcha.
So, again, kind of the strategizing, that part, getting to know the people, the environment, their challenges, that kind of stuff was fun.
But then going to events, it's a different story. And in a guy like Ryan, like you're so natural and like, hey, I'm going to go to an event and I'm going to walk out with 30 different friends.
Yeah.
Like that's a different.
It's
skills.
not even work.
Yeah. You're like,
the
I
best
just
part.
love doing it. Yeah.
It's just fun.
It's so good. It is a different, it takes a different energy to do that for sure.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, that would have killed me.
Yeah.
Like draining wise. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
to
for
try
sure.
to make 30 friends. And
Yeah.
And it's the thing that keeps me energized, I feel like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So good at it. Okay.
So I mean, that's where where I kind of was in the advising thing, and doing all right at it, and then looking at one of our key people at Insight, who moved on to a different role that was really the only modern work and learning person at that time.
Okay.
At our office.
Was it called Modern Worker and Learning at that time?
Or
Or was it more of a this specific person at Insight does this kind of outside the box thing in technology, and we're just kind of rolling with it?
Yeah, I don't remember if the learning was tagged on or not. But
So like
modern work
it wasn't
for
official
sure.
yet. It wasn't like the official Modern Work and Learning team.
Yeah, I mean, there wasn't much of a team because
Yeah.
it was just one person.
Sure.
But
Just curious.
Sure.
yeah, modern work is
Take the credit. Just say no. It
No,
was just
no.
it was nothing. It was nothing until I stepped in. You
that's
can
absolutely
say
fine.
that.
I did it. It was me.
Travis. I can take no credit for that. And in fact, I mean, you brought up earlier that Microsoft is full of innovation.
Yeah. Yeah.
And really, that's where the whole modern work practice comes from.
Yeah.
Is something that Microsoft has come
Yeah.
up with.
Fair.
And so there's just not a lot of people that are either doing it or doing it well. At least based on the experience that I've seen with other technology providers that we've interacted with, based on clients coming to us and finding out that there's this whole world of new adoption possibilities, right?
Yep.
But anyway, so the position opened up, and I was just like, I don't know who should fill their shoes, but it looks kind of fun, and I am willing to step in temporarily, at least, to help facilitate the kinds of things that they're doing, because I knew enough about it to be dangerous from an IT strategy perspective, right?
Danger. I love it.
But I'll be honest, like I I was pretty scared.
And Ben, you're crazy. You're crazy good at it. And between you and Dean, I wish Dean could have been here today, but between the two of you, you guys are such a great team in like specifically. I mean, I'm talking about the workshop side of things, but also I know that when you're talking about Teams phone integration and all that stuff, like you guys work so well in both the technical side and the communication with the client and training and all of that together. You guys are just a powerhouse of a team to make it happen.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
really cool to see you guys work together.
Yeah, and so we with Dean, you had mentioned in the
Yeah.
workshops, and his background in teaching and training is awesome, and hosting events and thinking
Yeah.
through some of the logistics there. But then we have Abby too on our
Mhm.
team, who's really good at, she's good with the low code or no code
Yeah.
business process automations.
That is a great point, and I should not have left her out. She's fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I mean, really together though, it is quite fun to see how even now that we've grown to a team of 3,
Yeah.
the types of I'm gonna say the types of impact, or as Ryan and I were talking earlier today, the light bulb moments that we can
Yeah.
create for people.
Mhm.
They didn't realize they could be doing something a different way that's
Yeah.
going to be more effective, and
Yeah.
that's really what it's all about.
Yeah, I love it. Ben, we've been talking a little bit about modern work and learning and kind of alluding to, hey, innovation, innovation, innovation. What are the things that maybe businesses aren't thinking about as it pertains to innovation and how they can be more innovative with these tools?
Good question.
Sure. Then when you start wanting to talk about things like security or whatever the case may be, maybe even specific use of an app like OneNote or a Microsoft Forms, those things tend to have more of a interconnectedness and scale with Microsoft than it does with the Google platform.
Sure.
Or you're always having to look for like a third party to integrate into the
Yeah.
solution.
Oh my gosh, unified communications for Google has always been a mess, and I think
Mm.
still is today.
Mm.
But all that to say is that the Microsoft 365 suite gives you so many different apps and features that they've built out over the course of quite a long time, or maybe an app or two that they've acquired. And they have also interconnected them through APIs or Microsoft Graph, or through the Power Platform, that you can have this really meaningful interaction with all that information and communication and collaboration. And so what people are missing out on is honestly just the knowledge of what apps they have available to them, and what business processes might be improved by having those apps. I think that was your question.
Yeah, and I think part of it too, really, because I think we say Microsoft and everybody's like, oh yeah, well, we're utilizing that, right? So anybody that might be listening to this might be like, yeah, I'm utilizing Microsoft. I use Outlook and I Teams people. And when they say I Teams people, they're referring to chat, right? And
Right, right.
So
Yeah.
what I'm thinking more along the lines of is, what are the common things that you see in your experience of businesses maybe utilizing Microsoft, but maybe not to its fullest potential, where they could actually be a bit more innovative with the tools that they have?
Yeah.
And maybe they just don't know.
I mean, the simplest one is being able to collect information about people, like how they're thinking, or maybe even brainstorm. Because you can have a paper form that ends up on someone's desk and gets lost or shuffled, or you might collect a bunch of different papers back, but you don't really have a really great way to synthesize that.
Sure.
And so just simply from moving something from a paper-based process, which surprisingly we still are finding.
Yeah,
out
it's
there in the wild.
crazy. It's crazy.
People still buy printers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that's not to say that all paper is bad.
No,
and there's
no.
good use cases for printing media. But at the same time, when we're talking about collecting data, it feels really kind of stupid to collect data on paper.
Yeah.
And then have
well,
to
26 people said they're coming in Monday, and 14 said that they're coming in Friday. But what do we do with that information?
Right.
And how does that
Yeah.
help us? Yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So the fact that you can just simply something like Microsoft Forms, or using a poll within Teams, either a Teams meeting or a Teams chat, you can use those things to collect that information, to collect it quickly, and then to make quick actionable steps from that as well.
Yeah. Do you have any examples of that? And I mean, I can think of one right now that, just Insight utilizes it for our Fridays. But can you think of anything specific where you're like, hey, this has been really, really helpful for businesses on the innovation side, whether it's Poly or whether it's a form or something else?
There's an organization that we helped automate like a PTO process.
Okay.
And ironically, that PTO process was still paper-based for them.
Oh,
Yeah.
really?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah. And so we went.
I'm laughing, but I'm it's not even like funny. It's just because I've seen it done that way on the
Yeah.
PTO side of things. It's not funny, and I'm not trying to be rude by any
Yeah.
means. It's just
Like, I've been there, done that, and I learned a different way to do it that's way better.
well, yeah. And I remember I was a director of operations for a small manufacturing company, and trying to remember who was off based off of their form that they submitted was so difficult. It was
Yeah.
so difficult. And then the calendar that you have, and then other people keeping track of it. It was a mess. So I'm laughing not because I'm not trying to be rude. I'm laughing out of I remember those days and it being awful.
it was real.
Yeah.
yeah,
It was
yep,
real. for
Totally,
you.
totally.
sure.
Yep.
Yeah, from the story I was told before we had automated that process for them, or at least it was digitized and automated, but was that they would literally take the paper and then it would end up on like a manager's desk, and then it would be potentially days before they knew whether or not they could have their
PTO.
their PTO
Yeah.
approved or not.
Yep.
So, I mean, having a couple of things, moving that into a digital format, it puts visibility on it, where you can check the status of something and see it, right? You don't have to go scrumble around papers on someone's desk to
Yeah.
see if they've, and that would be intrusive anyways.
Yeah. Yeah.
So having a medium that you can go to and have some oversight on, whether it's as the requester of an approval or whether it's as a manager of a department, and maybe you're making the approvals, or maybe someone else is making approvals, and you just need to be able to see where things are at.
Yeah.
That visibility is huge.
Yeah.
Because again, papers get lost in the shuffle.
Yeah.
right?
Absolutely.
So I mean, that's one aspect of that, and then the other is simply the actual approval process.
Yeah.
Because you can literally click a button in your email, or click a button in Teams, or Outlook, and it's embedded right there in your communication that you're using every day, anyways.
Yeah.
And it's in your workflow, in your inbox, so to speak, and it's approved. It's done.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can do a quick visual check to make sure that works in the calendar compared to other people's calendars.
Talk to me a little bit about the learning sites. How did that come up, and what is it good for? Why do we not only promote it but also believe in it and utilize it?
Learning in general is an enormous part of creating efficiencies. You have to make time for things to improve them. If you spend all your time working in the business or just getting things done, you're missing opportunities to be able to work on the business instead of in it.
Sure.
And that comes down to not only just for managers, but also for individuals, right? We all want to continue to learn and grow and do things better or more effectively. And actually, while I'm on that topic too, something that's really interesting that I recently read is that when we replace certain things and create some efficiencies, that doesn't mean we just turn around and we decide to just book more meetings and then become even more meeting tired and exhausted.
Yeah.
So it's equally as important what we do with that time savings as it is with, having the ability to actually save that time.
Sure.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. Yep.
And so learning is one of those things. So if people don't know what tools they have available to them, or maybe they're coming from a G Suite, or maybe they're younger and it's their first time getting a big boy job, and they need to just learn the ropes of how to use some of the very basics of some of the applications, so that way they can navigate around and be comfortable. Right? We can facilitate that comfort and that adoption through learning. And
Yeah.
so we've created this Microsoft 365 learning site and resources, some of which we've collected things we didn't need to recreate the wheel. We've collected some quick start guides from Microsoft on some of the apps, and we've included that. But then we'll also create videos where we don't think there's really a good video on that now
Sure.
that help people understand a very basic concept that if it's not stated, it's some people will get it and will have it assumed, but that's not very kind to just assume that people are going to automatically understand things. So providing people a library of resources, like, hey, I haven't really used Teams before, so I can go to all the Teams page and see all the Teams resources and be able to, have a good understanding of how to operate. Then that helps them in their everyday work.
Yeah. I like that, man. I like what you said about assuming, right? And I think we do that a lot, especially as it pertains to, our coworkers or even our organization understanding the tools that they do have. Something I think that I think about is, questions of maybe leaders inside of an organization not knowing where to start on the innovation side, or even, utilizing tools that they might have access to but not know how to use. What advice would you give them if they're like, hey, I know that I have, the Microsoft suite, but I'm not sure where to start?
Yeah. Come to one of our workshops.
Yeah. That is true. That is true. Yeah.
No, I mean, honestly, though,
Yeah.
I would first say creating space and time
Yeah.
to be able to think critically about what's available to you. I actually have built out what I call our modern work and learning toolbox.
Okay.
And so it's kind of a long list of different apps, or maybe even business processes, or just different things that we've been able to create some efficiencies with. And so it's knowing the toolbox a little bit that gives you the power to make those changes. But you have to actually get to know what you are able to do within that. So you need to create the space and the time and the energy to look at some of those things. If you're not the person that can do that, find the person who can and give them the freedom to do it.
Okay.
And I jokingly said come to our workshops, but in all sincerity, something like our workshops does a couple of things for them. It gives them that time dedicated to it. So we on some of our workshop, or most of our workshops, we try to allocate 2 hours.
Yeah.
Not necessarily for like company-wide trainings and stuff like that. But we're talking, when I say workshop, we're talking about the type of thing that we invite people to just to come and learn, right? And get that hands-on experience.
And you're doing that on specific things, right? So we have, if you're interested in that, go to our website and check out our events page. We have, one of my favorites is Teams versus Outlook that you do, which is great. Copilot, and you're kind of, focusing in on one or a couple of the tools that are available at that time too, right?
Yeah, and not just the tools, but we're trying to help people understand how a tool can come alongside a business process or communication, for example. So like in Outlook versus Teams, we're not trying to teach you
to pick one or the other.
Not necessarily.
How to use them in tandem correctly.
But at the end,
best way
there is a
possible.
fight. There's a brawl at the end.
It
Some
is.
people pick Teams, some people pick Outlook. No.
I mean, some people do want to pick their
I know.
fights.
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
For sure. But the important thing is that it gives them the space and the time away from their day-to-day work.
Yeah.
So we love facilitating that here. Not only that, we do a little bit of group thinking as well.
Yeah.
So we have anywhere from 8 to 12 different people that are here at a time. That is limited for a couple reasons. One is it facilitates better discussion, but also we have hands-on demo units that we like to let people use.
Sure.
But we actually use the experience from each person that's attending the workshop to speak into the business process, or to speak into frustrations that they might have with technology or communications within an organization, not even related to the technology side, right? And so then we look at and say, here's a basic set of things that Teams does really well. Here's a basic set of things that Outlook or email can do really well. where do you see your organization plugging into one or the other if you want to gain the most efficiency?
Yeah.
And so it gives them that space to really wrestle through that.
Yeah, I like that. Ryan, you're talking to clients or potential clients quite often. What is it that you would recommend for a potential client or a client of ours that might be struggling on this innovative side or not knowing where to start? What would you suggest?
Honestly, the redundancy is a bummer, but you got to do it, and it's inviting them to these workshops.
Okay.
So it's easy to, if I meet someone for whatever reason, maybe they are just being nice and they're like, hey, this guy wants to chat. I know it's about technology. I'm not in the market, whatever. I'll give him a chance.
Yeah.
Or someone that's wanting something like, we know our technology is terrible and shambles. We can do better. We're having emergencies all the time. We need help. How do we get help? What do we look at? Those are the two types of conversations come through, right? It's easy to talk to the person that needs help and wants help because they've realized that a change needs to happen. They're willing to talk about whatever. So they want to hear what you have to say.
Yeah.
But it's the other people where you kind of organically maybe just bump into, meet, and you want to tell them about what you do, but you want to learn about their stuff. It's just so much more inviting to say, hey, we have these free workshops. It's free lunch. They're on topics that can help you create some value in what you're already spending in technology. And then they kind of hear that it's related to Microsoft products. They're like, what? Really? There's always this question mark on their face is like, I've never heard of such a thing. There's training, interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's the easiest thing for them to say, tell me more about that than anything else in IT. I mean, unless they have that reason to come to you. So in just someone seeing one event, one workshop, they're always like, hey, what's another one we can do? Or what else at Insight can I learn about? Because they see this piece of it. They're like, oh, now I'm wanting to learn about more. Yeah. So honestly, it's the best thing of these free workshops is to direct them towards.
And something that I think is so important, and what you said, Ben, is it is an easy speak, but it's a harder practice, right? It's easy to say, hey, spend that time, but as things pop up and your time seems to slim down. But if you can prioritize that time, I'm like a guy that wants to outline something, create a plan to move forward. And so I would say yes to both of the things that you have to say. But I think I would also say, hey, number one, reserve that time. Number two, check out what Microsoft has to offer. And maybe you're like, I don't know where to start on that side. Okay, well then great, come to the workshop. But in all of that too, maybe think through what is it that you're struggling with in your business? What are the things that you're like, man, I go home, it's the end of the day, I feel like I worked my butt off all day, but I can't tell you what I got done.
Yeah, fair.
You know what I mean? And so if you can sit back for an hour or 30 minutes or even 15 minutes and say, this is what took the majority of my time today, and I don't like it. So being able to identify those problems and then say, okay, I'm going to record that in some form or fashion, and then look and say, okay, Microsoft, how can you help me on this side of things? Or, hey, Insight, I'm coming to this workshop and I've got some questions for you. When I come to this workshop, that is a great way, I think, to utilize that time that you're talking about, right? So, Ben, I love your passion for Microsoft, the way that you implement and train and teach people how to use it. One last question, I think, before we wrap some things up. I think innovation in general and even new things, specifically as it pertains to whether it be a manager or organization-wide, at times change and innovation can be scary. What is your recommendation for somebody that might be frozen in I'm afraid of what this innovation might mean for me, or I'm afraid that the organization may not adopt the innovation behind it?
Have you ever felt scared and afraid because your company didn't go for it? I'm just curious. You were very passionate about those statements.
No, I don't think that I have ever been that way, but I do think we've run into several conversations where people are like, hey, I love this idea. Like, I can even think of a couple of people that we've met at workshops that are like, I love this idea and I'm bringing this back to my organization, and they're going to fight me on it the whole time.
Yeah.
And we're like, hey, we get that. We understand it. We know that change can be difficult. We would love to help you facilitate that or organize some training around it or help you adopt it. But yeah, we've faced some of that. So,
Good point.
Yeah, just what would your recommendation be for somebody that might be scared of either adversity in the change or even, again, not knowing where to start on the innovation side?
Yeah, and this might be kind of weird, but because I recently visited the Henry Ford Museum, I did a little bit of follow-up research on that.
Yeah.
And Henry Ford did something really great and innovative at the beginning of it, and then he didn't want to change.
Oh, okay.
And so what they sat at the top for a while, but because they didn't want to change, they actually quit innovating in some ways, right? And they started to fall behind the competition.
They started out
stopped
as
trying.
innovators and just
They did. They
you
got
either
stagnant.
continually do it or you drop off, I guess, right?
Yeah. And so
Yeah.
I would challenge the idea to people who say, maybe they don't outright say we've always done it this way or it's not broke, don't fix it. That mentality can only last so long for an organization or for a person
Sure.
before either what they're doing or the way that they're operating or their organization, like it could become obsolete.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so if you want like a healthy, growing organization or department, then you've got to make the space for change.
Yeah.
And you don't have to be an innovator to do that. You just have to be able to facilitate that and be in agreement with it.
Yeah.
And not all change is good.
Yeah.
And so I'm not here to say that either. But really you want to make sure that there is an openness to ideas, and maybe testing ideas and vetting them out or giving them a good run, right? Because if you squash all of those things because we just do it this way and we're going to keep streamlining forward, that could be the end of your business.
Sure.
To be frank.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing is that the way that you approach change too, you'll want to be a couple of things, I guess. You do need some C-level buy-in, if you will, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you don't necessarily have support from a leadership structure,
You have to.
then it's not gonna end up working out well for you.
Yeah, something that Mike always says is, and it's true, like it has to start from the top down, right? And so, if you're a manager of a department or whatever, it probably should start with you. But if you can get it higher than that, where you have your C-levels that believe in the innovation in and of itself, that's always a better plan for adoption, right?
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So, and if you could have maybe, a standing agreement that, yeah, we have this flexibility for your department, and you don't necessarily have to have, the C-level running the initiative. But as long as there's the buy-in that, yes, we need to try something new or we need to adopt something that's going to eventually create more success for us, then we need to give it a go.
Yeah.
So that's one thing is the buy-in part of it. And the other one is that for change to be effective, you need champions.
Yeah.
So you need people who can champion the technology or champion the use cases, people that know the business processes, people that are willing to try something new. Maybe they're the ones that are, once they know the tool set, they're a little less hesitant to click and try something, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you get these people who are willing to experiment with things and give them a go, but then can also rally around with other people to say, hey, I tried this. What do you think about that? Or they kind of have a buddy system, if you will. That's going to end up spreading in some ways like a good cancer.
Sure.
Across either a department or an organization where people realize, hey, they're communicating through channels and Teams instead of through chats or through email or through knocking on a door or through a phone call. And because they did it that way, there's open communication, and you can better manage your notifications, and you can see more of what you want and what you need to see and less of what you don't need to in a timeline manner. That opens up some great efficiencies for them, and they might be able, other people will see that as well.
Yeah.
And
I
catch
hear you.
on.
Yeah. Yeah, awesome. Well, Ben, thanks so much for your time. I really appreciate you being on and talking with us. Say that one of our listeners wants to get in touch or wants to be a part of one of the workshops that we run here. What would they do?
Go to trustedinsight.com/events.
INSITE.
Yes.
That's how you spell insight.
INSITE. Absolutely. And our next one is January 9th, which is a Thursday, 2025, and that starts at 8 a.m. And you guys are going to be talking about Copilot and task management, correct? Can you just give us a brief insight into what that is?
It's a good one.
It is a major time saver. It's an additional license if you want the Microsoft 365 Copilot license that integrates with the Microsoft 365 data and apps ecosystem. And if you can get, I believe it is 2.5 hours of savings per month, which might initially sound like, how can a single piece of technology save you 2.5 hours per month? That's actually really easy to do with Copilot.
Very easy. Very easy.
2.5 is actually pretty darn conservative.
Minimum.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's 180% return on investment.
Awesome. Ben, thank you so much for your time, and we really appreciate you. Love having you on, and can't wait to see what Modern Work and Learning does for innovation in business.
Thanks, Travis.
Thanks, man. Woohoo! Bada bing, bada boom.